In this new world, we're all struggling with learning to communicate differently, learning to communicate everything in the virtual world. Because we're all going to that platform, we have to understand that our body language is de-emphasized, and what picks up the slack very often is PowerPoint. So this seminar is dedicated toward helping you create slides that help you communicate more powerfully with PowerPoint and still establish your credibility. My name's Dave Gunby, and I've been coaching and training presenters since 1990. So it's been 30 years for me. First 8 years or so was as an internal corporate trainer. And since then, I've had my own business working with clients. What we'll cover today will help you be more effective in the virtual world in how you use PowerPoint and actually how you create your PowerPoint. With that in mind, let's take a look at where we're going. So I'm going to share my screen and take myself out of the picture so that my image doesn't block the view of the slides. As I'd mentioned, we're going to get into some tools to help you create more powerful PowerPoint for your virtual presentations. Three things we'll cover today. First, slide structure. We'll talk about a very specific structure based on some research that increases your audience's retention of your material. Second, using images to enhance your presentations and enhance your audience attention. And lastly, just a few tips, some general concepts about your slide design. Let's get into it, starting with that structuring your presentation. In 2002 at Penn State, Michael Alley in the physics department did some research on a different structure for a presentation, what he calls the assertion evidence structure, and he found that it improves audience retention. We're all used to seeing slides that look like this. Lots of words, pretty boring stuff. Michael Alley created a different design, what he called, I mentioned, assertion evidence, and it looks like this slide. The top line isn't just a title, it's an assertion. It makes a bold claim, and the body of the slide proves it with a chart, illustrates it with a picture, or demonstrates it with a diagram. And what he found was that it increased retention by almost 1/5. It increased it by 17% over this standard structure that we're used to. Let's break that down, starting with the assertions, then we'll get into the evidence. So how do we create an assertion for our slides instead of a title? Keep in mind, a strong assertion will create a more persuasive voice for both you and for your slide. What we'll look at is some before and afters. Looking at what are some topics or titles that we've all seen, and how do we convert those to assertions or headlines. First off, quarterly earnings. We've all seen a slide like that. It doesn't really create excitement. We don't get our hearts in a twitter about, ooh, can't wait to see what's coming next. An assertion remake of that is business is increasing in each quarter. So it makes a claim that then the slide has to prove or illustrate. Notice that it also teases our attention to want to read further, whereas a title or a topic doesn't do the same thing. Features becomes new features make XYZ easy to use. Even if my slide has other features beyond just that one primary feature of easy to use, it's still a good, effective assertion. Lithium-ion battery, this was from a presentation about Tesla. Lithium-ion battery holds charge longer than competition. Market share, the assertion is mature product lines are selling less. Types of SBA loans becomes the SBA has a loan that will meet your needs. You'll notice that some of these are a little bit longer, and if they have to wrap to a second line, that's okay. And in fact, the example I showed you on the previous slide was one of Michael Alley's from Penn State. So it's okay if it wraps to a second line. That was about the assertions. Now let's spend a little bit more time on the evidence. Evidence can come in one of four fashions. It can be a chart, picture, diagram. Worst choice, our last option though, should be text. There are some cases where that's the only option, but we'll also talk about how to make that, even the weakest of slide constructs, make that more effective. So we're going to look at each of these individually. Starting with charts. Most of us have seen charts with legends. Those actually slow down your audience's understanding of the content. So we want to get rid of legends to speed up that visual impact. Think if you ever saw this slide. You go through the thinking process of matching and going back and forth from the legend to the pie chart to the legend to the pie chart. Versus this. You'll notice how much quicker the impact is of that slide. Oops, accidentally advanced. You'll notice this slide, much quicker impact. So we get rid of the legend. How do we do that? Let's take a look and I'll demonstrate that. So whenever you see a demonstration slide, know that I'm going to exit out of slideshow and get into slide view to show you the technique. First thing we want to do is select the pie chart, and notice that I've selected the whole thing. I can tell because I've got those selection handles on each of the pie pieces. If I actually double clicked a second time, it'll only select one pie piece. But I want to change the entire chart. So I've got the whole thing selected, and then I right click. And then down in the menu that pops up, add data labels. There you go, it adds in the data itself. That's not enough for us. We also want to put the category label in there as well. So I right click again, go to Format Data Label, and I can click Category, or I could click on Series, but that series doesn't help me here. So I'm select Category. Now I've got all of the pie pieces labeled individually, and I can get rid of this useless and distracting legend. Now, as we look at this, one thing probably pops up in your attention is you can't see this label here. So I'm going to double click a second time rather, so that that's the only label selected. I'm going to go back to my format and change that to black font. So now you can see the difference that makes. So there's a little bit of insight into adding data labels and getting rid of legends on a pie chart. Another thing to keep in mind on any chart is that if we've got lots of variables and we show it all at once, it's distracting. It divides the audience's attention. They try to make sense of the new information while they're trying to listen, and we can't do both. As much as we throw around the term multitasking, neuroscience tells us that we don't actually do it. I want to have it show up just one piece at a time. So I want to animate the slide so that I can show the Atlantic division and talk about a little bit about the Atlantic division. It's 8.2 in this quarter. Last year at this time it was, and then you can give a little more detail. And then the same thing with the Southeast. And continuing on with each of those regions. How do we do that? Let's exit out of slideshow. And again, we'll select the entire pie chart. Now you'll notice that I don't have the whole pie chart selected, so I'll click out here and then click again. Now I've got the whole pie chart selected. I'll go up to animations, and I want to make the chart appear. Just a general tip here, always favor appear or the really simple animations. Those complex movement-based animations, while they're fun, they aren't actually included in PowerPoint for person-driven presentations. They're there for kiosk-driven presentations when there's no communicator there other than PowerPoint. Go with just the basic appear. Now, as you look over in the animations pane, and if that didn't show up, you can find that on the ribbon and make that show up. But now what it's done is it's only animated this in as a single thing. I've got some other options, effect options, timing triggers, and chart animations. So I'm going to expand the chart animations. And I don't want it to animate as one object. I want it to animate by category. And there we go. Now, you'll also notice just a little inside tip here. As I expand the animations, you'll see the first animation is the background. Well, there's no background here. I'll show you what that means. So I'm going to click. And my first click, nothing happened. Second click, something showed up. So that background right here doesn't do anything. So I want this first category, Atlantic, to show up on my first click. So I could either delete the background or just have this category show up at the same time. So we'll go into timing and have it appear with previous. So now that was a 2, now it's converted to a 1. And here you see the impact. My first click brings up that first category. There's the how-to on animating a pie chart. Column charts, also bar charts, which are just the same thing but horizontal, are a little bit different than a pie chart since they're separate elements, but the same impact. If I show you all of this all at once, it's overwhelming your attention. You can't listen to me at the same time you're integrating this information. Versus, and you notice the background appeared on my first click. It's only on the second click that the first column shows up. And I've animated this so that one column shows up at a time so I can give a sentence or two about each of those, maybe even a little more. And there's the after to the before. How do we do it? Let's exit out of slideshow. Here's where this becomes a little bit extra work compared to a pie chart. So when I select the blue column, for example, you'll notice it selects all of the blue columns, but not the other columns. So first thing I may want to do is add a data label. So I'll right-click on it and add data label. You'll notice it only does it for the blue columns. And then if I wanted to, I could do the same thing for the other columns or colors. Now that I've got that, now I could also get rid of this legend and put the labels on these and put every label imaginable there, but then the slide gets a little too cluttered. So there are times when I do want to keep the legend if it's something simple like this. Now let's get into animating it. So I want to select the entire chart. So I'm just going to click on the chart itself. And you'll notice none of the columns or any of those data points are selected. I can go up to appear. So now it's going to default to making the entire chart appear all at once. I'll go over here to my chart animations, and I've got more choices here. I could do by series. So the series will be the years, and you'll notice there's that extra one at the beginning where it shows the background. I could do by category. So there's an extra variable there. Since the categories are east, west, north, and category 4. I don't know why I didn't label that. Or by element in series, which is what I did earlier, or by element in category. So these are the categories. These blue, blue, blue would be the series. I'm going to go with exactly the way I demonstrated it earlier. I'm going to go into the animations. I'm going to expand this. I'm going to make, I don't want background to have its own animation. That just seems a little silly to me. So make it with previous. And there's the finished product. We gave you some insight on 2 of the most popular chart types. The column one, also the same techniques apply to a bar chart. There are other types of charts out there. I could spend more time on how to animate and add data labels to those, but that would take this tutorial a lot longer to do that. So we talked about charts. Let's get into images. Full screen images have a lot more impact than partial screen. We've all seen a chart like this. Not bad, or a slide like this. Again, not bad. Few words, nice image, does have a title instead of a headline. We could do better. So we use the same image, but now it's the background and it fills the screen. It just looks a little bit more professional. You'll notice I also changed the title to a headline. How do we do this? Let's exit slideshow. First thing I want to do is select the image that I want to make fill the screen. Now, many of us will just start stretching it, and sometimes it changes the aspect of it and it starts getting distorted. I don't want to do that. I want that same good look to it. So I select that, I go to picture format so that I get my picture format ribbon showing up here. And I want to select the crop tool. And you'll notice on the image now there's 2 different types of handles. There's the crop handle, or there's the stretch handle. I want to work with the crop handles first. And I want to drag those crop handles so that they fill the slide. Now, since the picture is still selected, I can go back to the crop tool and go to the pull down menu and go to crop fill. And now it fills the entire slide. Now, if it had to bleed off of the slide, it automatically crops to fit the slide. And then you can reposition the image so that it's centered the way you would like it to be. But now if I click outside, you see that the image is in front of some of my text. So I'm going to rearrange this. Now I could select this picture and send it backward repeated times until it's all the way at the back, or I could just go to reorder objects and drag it, click and drag it to the back. Voila. But there's a problem. The text is going to be hard to see with that really cool picture background. What I want to do is change the quality of the picture. So I select the picture, go to the picture format tab, and there are different choices here, the shape, the effects, size and properties, but I want to change the picture itself and its transparency. So I expand that and I can change it manually by changing the percentage of, 50% transparent, 100% transparent, which is silly. Or I can use presets, and I like to do that if that's available. So I could do, I think that's 50. Not bad, but this word capital still looks like it might be hard to read, so I'm going to go a little bit lighter. And now it shows up pretty well. Now I want to center this. Click on Arrange and Align, Center. Or if you're working in a Windows world, by the way, I'm in a Mac world. If you're working in a Windows world, some of your ribbons or menu items are a little bit different, so you may want to do a little searching around for those. So now I've centered this on the slide. I can do the same thing with my title. Move that down so it doesn't, oops. Move that down so that it doesn't block. And center that. And you'll notice I've already animated this one. There we go. And here's the finished product. So we gave you a little insight how to include images, make them bleed to fit the full screen. A word of caution. Now I went past that slide a little bit too quick. Let's come back to this slide. I will tell you that if you do want to use a slide constructed somewhat like this, where you've got a picture and text and the image isn't bled out to fill the screen, put the image on the left side and the text on the right side. And the reason for that has to do with how our brain hemispheres do different things. This setup is going to work better for most audiences to have a quicker impact. Simply forgot to mention that earlier. So let's get back to where I left off. So here's our demonstration. We just did that practice. So with images in mind, we want to incorporate as many as we can, nice quality and legal images as possible. Since there are going to be more PowerPoints used in communications now with everybody going virtual, it really behooves you to use legal images because you never know when somebody in your audience either was in the legal field, is married to someone in the legal field, and they recognize an image that you don't have rights to. So here's some really good references, some good, not references, what's the word I'm looking for? Referrals. Well, here's some good websites for some good images for you. My favorite is Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S. They've got tons of really good looking images and they're free and legal. The same with Unsplash. That's my second favorite. And Pixabay has lots of good ones, but they have more pay for the images than the other two. So that's why it's my third choice. So we talked about a couple of things here. We went over the structure of the slides and integrating images in your slides. Now for the last little bit, and that's just some tips. But before we get there, some insight on working with images. Treat your images just like you do, or treat your diagrams rather, just like you do images. Enlarge them to fill as much of the screen as possible. Don't just go with the default that PowerPoint selects when you cut and paste in or add in a smart art. So enlarge it to fill the screen. Limit the number of words. Be as brief as possible. It shouldn't be self-explanatory. It should require you explaining. And make the font 20 points or larger. And this is critical, especially in virtual presentations, because you're going to have some audience members who are tying into the presentation on their phones or maybe a tablet. So they're working with a much smaller screen. Make sure they can easily see it. Animate anything you can so that their attention stays with you. That's going to help you control their attention. It's also going to keep you present so that you don't start thinking ahead of yourself. And last of the 4 types of evidence was words. We've all seen a slide like this, right? Your first inclination is to try to read it all or go check your email. Neither of which is going to help you, the presenter. Because if we're reading it, we're not listening. If we're checking the email, we're not listening. We don't want to use words this way. Credible presenters, the pros, use very few words in their PowerPoint. So use as few as possible. They should be incomplete thoughts, even cryptic. Just a couple words so that they can remember it. Animate one bullet at a time so that, again, they don't get ahead of you. How do we do this? Just a quick demo on this as well. So I want to add in a picture, and I'll go to the easiest way possible. I'll go to the previous slide, grab that picture, copy it, paste it here. I want to now see if I tried to select that text, it won't let me. Why? Because the image is in front. So I have to rearrange, move that to the back. Now I can select the text. I'm going to shrink down that box so it's a little more manageable. I want to center the text box. So we'll align it to center. Next thing I want to do is I want to change the spacing of this. So I can right click on it and pull up the paragraph and make it multiple. Or if I go in, there's some double, 1.5 single line, or I'm going to multiple and do triple so that it fills that text box. Another option, let me undo that, a quick shortcut, is up here in my ribbon. I've got the choice for line spacing, and I can just do a pull down menu and go to 3 lines. Now I want to, I moved the picture again. Let's undo that. So I want to see, I've got the blinking cursor. That means I haven't selected the text box. I'm selecting individual text. So I select the text box, want to animate it up here, and it defaults to all 3 bullets animating individually. And there we go. So there's all of the information around those 4 different types of evidence, starting with charts, images, diagrams, and lastly, text. Again, that's your fallback position if you don't have any of the previous 3. Tips. First off, if you don't have to use a template, consider avoiding them. I don't use templates. And the reason being, many of the templates minimize the space you have for your content. Look at this. I can either have the text roll across those different color fields, or I can let those color fields limit the amount of space I have. This one limits my space just because of the artistic angle. While that looks cool, it works against me as presenting my content. I want my slides to look cool because of what I did, not because of what some template designer did. This one is one I'm seeing a ton of. It's aesthetically pleasing, but it also cuts out effectively about 1/3 of my space. When possible, get rid of templates. Now, I know some of you have to work with corporate templates. I get it. And some of those templates may pinch your space. Do what you can with those. If you have the ability on some of your slides, you can hide the background, but only if you get the corporate sign off. Some presentations say, no, our brand is critical and you can't hide the background elements. But if you do have that on some situations, consider doing that. Next little tip is background. This is a change I've made in my own presentations in the last couple of years. I used to be white background, dark text. But then I started seeing some of the research and realized, ooh, actually dark background looks better, creates more of a pop. Right? The dark background actually makes this slide pop because of that contrast. But if you were focused only on this white, it doesn't pop as much compared to this. And if you're thinking, I'm not sold, I'm not sure, really want to go with a black background, we like white background. Understand that road signs designed for our safety follow that same concept of a dark background, white text. Now you're thinking, stop signs? That's red, not dark. Think about when you see that stop sign at night. It's not red, unless the headlights are on it. But even if you don't have halogen, headlights, it's still not red, but it's dark. But if your headlights aren't on that stop sign, it looks black. The same thing with highway signs, like the Miami Beach sign in the middle. Those appear to us in the dark as black background, white text, or white indicators. So use that, something designed for our safety. There's research behind that. People just didn't willy-nilly say, how about green background? There's actually research that found that creates the most contrast. Another insight is the simpler slides make quicker impact on your audiences. You might be tempted to put as much information on each slide so you keep the slide count down. Resist that temptation, please. Even this, though it's a visually oriented slide and it's got a headline, is really dense. And if you're like me, you looked at that and you started doing math in your head, figuring out the differences, and what you stopped doing was listening to me. So we can do better than that. This one doesn't work much better. Now it's got more white space in it, but there are 3 different points. There's one point about financial statements, keeping those in order, gathering detailed information about your business, consulting with your financial institution. And even this isn't really a headline, it's a command. If it was a headline, it would say, detailed information about business increases profitability, or something like that. So that one's not great either. Infographics, really popular now. Is it cleaner, simpler than the other 2? Yes, it is. But there are still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But you look at this and there's 6 columns, there's 6 labels, there's 6 numbers. So 6 times 6, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then there's 25 bits of information on that. That's a lot. So try to stick with 1 point per slide. Yes, it means more slides, but it's a good trade-off because it creates a more effective presentation on your part. During the last few minutes, we went over 3 things. First off, we started about structuring your slides using that assertion evidence format. Second, incorporating images and charts and diagrams to really drive home your points. And lastly, we went over just some 4 basic tips about mindset of your slides. Last thing I want to give you, and this was from a friend that told me about fonts. Choose those wisely. When possible, go with sans serif. It's easier for most of us to read. There is some data out there that says that this actually is easier for some people with visual impairment to read. Secondly, if you ever present across different computers, so you take your presentation to a different computer, make sure you've got common fonts. Don't use anything really cool just because you think it looks artsy. Because if you take that to another computer that doesn't have that on its hard drive, then it's going to do some funky things to the way the text is wrapped and the labels on charts. So stick with some of the basics. Arial, Calibri, which is my favorite, Century Gothic, Helvetica, Tahoma, or lastly, Verdana. Let me bring me back in. So here's me with a little shorter hair. Here's me with a little bit longer, but combed back because, like you, I can't get a haircut either. Let me know if you have any questions. I want to help out as much as I can in these difficult times. We're all feeling some pain here. So if there was something in this that you're wondering what I meant by this or wasn't quite clear, call me, email me, let me know. You see there my company website. You can reach me through that as well. My email, my cell phone number. Let me know how I can help. Until then, use this information to your advantage. Make sure that you stand out as a presenter with the way you create and interact with your PowerPoint. Use this opportunity for virtual presentations to really differentiate yourself.